This video is designed to demonstrate the basics of how to use the services collection that comes as part of the Accordance Automation script library. You can find information about those on the Macintosh Biblioblog. There's, in addition to the tutorials that come with the download package, a good README file to see with screenshots about installation and setup. On the Macintosh Biblioblog, there's even an installation video to help walk you through that. Once you have the installation done, you can find the list of the Accordance services that you've got installed in the application menu and the services submenu. You'll see both kinds of services that you have installed and active. So the ones that are named Accordance, those are designed to take the reference that is received, the text that's received, bring Accordance to the front, and look those up using the kind of module or tool that has been specified in that service, whether it's a text module looking for verses or words or a tool of some sort. The second kind are the insertion services, which can only work with verse references and returning the full text. The benefit of that is Accordance does not come to the front. It allows you to work and interact just in the application, the word processor, the text environment that you are working in. In addition to inserting the text into your document, it can also copy it to the clipboard or display it or speak it, but most useful is this insert functionality. So for instance, here I've got Joshua 3:16. I have it highlighted in my document, and because it's highlighted under services, I have available to me these insert options. So insert verses 1 means it will insert the verses from my first scripture module as it's found in the customized list in the Accordance library. As soon as I click on that, it has done its work and bam, inserted the verses there. Not just English texts, but also you can work with Greek texts. So here's a reference to Matthew. I can insert my second module if it happens to be Greek, or I can also use a named module. Here I've got the GNT tag text, and bam, it has inserted it just as quickly. You can get to those service lists in many applications through not just the application menu, but also through a contextual menu by control clicking or right clicking. And many applications have this enabled, so I can reference it this way in addition to referencing it through the application menu. But note that you can see here that I've assigned even some keyboard combinations, some shortcuts to those. In the installation process, you can take advantage of doing so by going to the System Preferences, and in the Keyboard panel, the Keyboard Shortcut subpanel under the Services category, you can see here where I have taken advantage of assigning keyboard shortcuts. So for instance, I could use that, assign it to the function and the module that I would use most often, and then very quickly be able to add the text into my documents. So just by highlighting the text and using the keyboard shortcut, bam. Highlight the text, keyboard shortcut, bam. Highlight the text, keyboard shortcut. So very quickly be able to get text into the document that you're wanting to work with. In addition to highlighting a text, there is a query option on these services that will ask you for the text and then allow you to insert it. So because here I have not highlighted text but instead have just the insertion point, I have access to these services, the insert query. So it will ask me to give the text reference and then put that into the document. You can use named references to modules, or also, again, here's just my first scripture module to insert the verses, which happens to be the Common English Bible for me. So I highlight that, and it's going to bring up a dialog to ask me for what text I'm wanting to insert. And as soon as I've put that in, and it has added the text for me. Some folks think of this as an F key option that was popularized in other biblical software. So it's a great addition to the workflow that we have in working with Accordance. Now, the other kind of module, services modules, are not for getting text into your document, but rather when you're reading documents that you don't change yourself, such as articles and websites, PDF articles you may be reading, that you can look things up from those documents, look them up in accordance. So for instance, let's say I'm studying about Megiddo using this article from the Biblical Archaeological Review website, and there's a verse reference that I want to work with in accordance, look up in accordance. So I highlight it. There I've highlighted a reference from Joel. And then up here in accordance, the first option is to look up verses in accordance, and to use my first English module, I could, if it was appropriate, choose a Greek module, a Hebrew module as well. But in my first English module, what this is going to do is bring that forward and look it up, run the search. So it opens a new iteration of my first English module and does the search for the Joel text there. But what's beautiful about this is you don't have to just work with verse references. You can also look up actual words as well. So here's battle. I highlight that, and I find the services that's going to look up not verses, but words. So it's going to bring accordance forward, bring up my first English module, for instance, and do a search for words. I click that, brings it forward, runs the search just as quickly as I could ask for it to happen. But these services can interact not just with text modules, but also with tools as well. So let's say in highlighting battle, I'm wanting to look that up in one of my accordance tools. So under services, I go to not English texts, but English tools. My first English tool, I click on that because battle's highlighted. It brings it forward and performs the search there, and you can see it's run the search for me. Also, in addition to looking up English tools and reference tools, all those kinds of tools, there are some of the graphic tools as well. So I can search for the maps as well. Let's say I'm studying the location of Megiddo, and it makes a reference to its relevancy to Haifa, and I want to look that up. So I go to the service and look for the accordance map, which can bring forward the first color module, map module, or the second or the third, whichever is your preference to work with. I do that search, brings map forward, and you can see it has run a search and successfully found Haifa. Not just the atlas, but also the timeline as well. So let's say there's reference here to 2nd Ramses, and because of that reference, there is, I want to look that up in the timeline. So I go to the accordance timeline, and bam, it's done that search, and it's found where Ramses 2 is, and I can see that in correlation to the rest of the timeline that I have. Another kind of module that it will work with, just to demonstrate for you, is the parallel tool. So here's a reference to Matthew 24:22. I can highlight that, and let's say I want to look at the other gospel texts that are in parallel to that. So I go to the service that will look up the first parallel module, which happens to be my Gospels one. You'll open that, and just as you'd expect, it will run the search for you. And then finally, in addition to reference tools and general tools and English tools, and if you've highlighted correctly the Greek or the Hebrew, Greek tools or Hebrew tools, also you can just do search all. So there's a word that you want to highlight and do a search all on, then here I've highlighted the word Greek. I go to the service that references the search all module. I highlight that, it'll open a search all window and run the search. These kinds of searches use the default fields when the window comes forward. So here the default was for all tools and texts and an English text. Some modules you can change the default to customize towards what would be most beneficial to you in your searching. Let's say I'm working in, for example, this web document on doing some Greek work, and here's the word oros. I of course can look that up if it's in a good format, text format or Unicode format that will work in the search. I can even just look for that in a text module. In my first English scripture text wouldn't find oros, but in my first Greek text it would. I'm doing a word search for that. It'll look and find oros. But in addition to that, you can use this in help and translation when you're looking in other documents, of course. I've got oros highlighted. Let's say I want to look that up in my lexicon. So under my first Greek tool, I can look up that word as well. It's going to bring that forward and look up Arose in Lauanita, which I happen to have as my first text module. But the limitation there is that the default for this module is a Greek entry. Let's say I'm in a translation mode and I'm wanting to be able to see what Greek words are suggested for the semantic domains of English glosses. I can change that there and do a couple ways to have quick access to that. I can save this actually. I can set up a module, set the way that I want the default that I want it to be searching for, and I can save that using under File, Save Active tab, and save that file as a reference, as a file that I can reference in an accordance service. So you can see here in the Finder I have saved a saved tab session as UBS English, and what this is the English gloss for the UBS dictionary. And so what that would allow me to do then is highlight a word that I am wanting to find the semantic domain for, the English gloss for, and then look that up in that Greek module. So I've highlighted the word world there, and under services this option is a save file option. So accordance save is the naming convention to help me remember what it is I've set this service to do. And then UBS English is the name of that file. So if I highlight that, it's going to bring up a new instance of that UBS English save file, and see how it was set to English gloss because that's the way it was saved, and it runs that search. And then I can run through, check the marks, and find all the options of the English glosses that were available. And in addition, if you don't want to go to the effort of setting up a save file and a custom service for that file, you can just simply use the current window service. What that will do is you can get the front window of Accordance set up the way you want to do repeated searches, and then have that available to you instantly. So I've got a word period here, and I go to Services Accordance Current Window. It'll run that search, and it'll only use the settings for the front window. And this is a way really that will enable you to do close to any kind of search repeatedly that you'd like to conduct in an inter-application environment, looking from one document, one text piece, a PDF, a website, and have access to the content of that in Accordance as well. Well, that's just a run through of the Accordance services that are available. You can look more at the documentation about how to customize services to get exactly at what it is you're wanting to do. You can find more information on the Macintosh Biblioblog. Contact us through that way, as well as make sure you find further use in the documentation in the README file. Hope you find all this helpful.